Welcome to the Westport Library. Today's program will begin momentarily. Supported by Verso Studios, created locally and shared with the world.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming today. We're so glad that you're here. So I'm Janine Esposito.
I'm Frederick Chu.
And together we're the co-founders of the Hive. Until a year ago, we're Westport residents for 32 years. And even though we moved, sadly, we didn't go more than 5 minutes away so that we can get back as much as possible. During that time, some of you know that we ran an arts nonprofit called Beechwood Arts and Innovation, and we had over 100 arts immersion salons where we brought together music, art, film, performance. I see a bunch of faces. Many of you were there at those. And we really felt that not only did all the artists collaborate, but the audience was a huge mix of ages and backgrounds, and they all collaborated with the artists, and it was really a wonderful feeling. When we decided to sell Beechwood as a place, we wanted to continue by having a new life with a new place that focused on that community. And that's what the Hive is. So,
Yeah, through the years that we were doing things with Beechwood Arts, we collaborated a number of times with this great Westport Library. It was this amazing space. I was even honored booked for the evening 1 year, which was still an unforgettable experience in my life. So it's great to be on the stage, great to be collaborating with the wonderful Westport Library and this incredible Verso Studios. Can we give them a hand, please? And today is very exciting because this is our very first ever event for the Hive, and you're all here. We really appreciate that. You're making history with us. Because we're brand new, we want to take just a few minutes and a few slides to give you a little bit of background and tell you a little bit about the Hive.
but first I'm taking a picture. If anyone objects, cover your face. We hope this to be one of many.
And I just wanted to take this opportunity. If there are clipboards back there, sign-up sheets. If you're not on our Hive newsletter email list, you can sign up there, and we'll definitely get you up, and you'll be able to follow all the things that we're doing.
Okay. Oh, you know, hold this. Yeah. Okay, so just to give you an idea of what the Hive is all about, first of all, our values. You know, when you do a new thing, you have to do your values, your vision, and your mission, and so this is ours. But our values, we realized, we did a lot of work on the metaphor of a hive. We wanted to make sure that it was really what we wanted it to be, and our values embody the ethos of the beehive. Enthusiastic collaboration, continual communication, flexibility, transformation, respect, empathy, and most of all, belonging. Our vision, you know, we thought to ourselves, if we're going to be making our core thing be about community, maybe we better look it up and see how it's defined. And one of the things that really surprised us is that the official legal definition of community are people that live in the same place. And it's also, the other definitions are people that share ideas, values, people that have in common these things, values, ideas, common goals. And we looked at each other and we thought, that's kind of not we feel like there's maybe almost too much of that right now. Everyone is in these micro communities. So we looked up sense of community, and every single definition said a feeling of belonging. And we said that's really what we'd like to create. So our vision is to reveal a broad sense of community defined by being human between people of all backgrounds, experiences, and mindsets. You're supposed to set that vision very high and lofty, so we did. Our mission is to collaborate with other community-driven organizations to foster a spirit of belonging and connection, both within and across communities, by creating opportunities like today to engage, to discover, to build empathy, and all of this fueled by the arts, dialogue, ideas, and transformation. So, this is our very first moment starting on that. You can let us know how we're doing. 2 more slides, and then we're going to get to the artist story share. So we do this 3 ways. One is through what we call cross-pollinating community gatherings. So the first is a pollinator gathering, and right now we are in the process of having executive directors of a lot of nonprofit organizations coming together to experience one of these pollinator gatherings. And what it is, very simply, it's a small group of people that get together, share a meal, and talk about, in a facilitated way, their experience with an element of being human. And everyone shares their experience in a certain way that's called empathy mapping. And by the time we're done, people are asking for other people's contacts. They want to stay in touch, and this is over a 1-hour conversation. Our vision is that we will have these conversations all over multiple towns and cities in the area, and that once or twice a year, we'll get all those groups that had those conversations and those insights and those ideas together to share what happened in their gatherings and to participate in a huge ideation in a big space in mixed teams. So that is something that we're very excited about doing. And then the last, well, it's not the last, but it's the second thing, 2 out of 3, that we want to do is some story shares, and you're going to experience that today, so I'm not really going to talk about it because in a minute you're going to be experiencing it. But these are things where we engage the arts to facilitate connection. Our second ever public event is also going to be at the Westport Library, and I'll let you talk about that.
Yeah, that's going to take place in 2 weeks, 2 weeks from today. It's a lid session. We've done these lid sessions in other places. This is the first time we're doing it in Westport. It's a way to bring people together who've had the experience of playing the piano. We read that 43% of Americans have taken piano lessons at some point. So we're trying to bring people together in this kind of invisible club. And you don't have to play the piano, you just have to appreciate the piano to come. And people are going to perform here. It's another way to bring people together to create a sense of community.
Okay, and then the third way that we are going to activate our mission, this is something that people don't really know that much about Frederick and I, but I, in addition to running Beechwood and being a visual artist, I have spent most of my career doing innovation from his very early days before people used that term in perfume ads, to helping companies innovate, reimagine, transform, understand the deepest needs of their customers. And I did that also with 64 libraries around the country. And that program teaches staff of these organizations how to do these things. Frederick, everyone knows, is an award-winning concert pianist internationally, but he also has developed some very unique techniques. You know, he was in Paris for 8 months without a piano, but a lot of concerts to play. So he developed a very interesting way of practicing mentally, emotionally, instead of physically. And so he also teaches that and has taught on dozens of universities and thousands of students and individuals. So we're bringing all that together to help community-driven organizations be able to do these things. So that's another part of the Hive, another working part of the Hive. And with that, we're ready for the artist story share. Is this me? Yeah. I don't know, I've been given a lot of these pages to talk about. We've run a number of story shares. This will be our third one here at the Westport Library, and we've done, I think, 6 or so at Beechwood. And you know, the thing, I'm a visual artist, and the thing about visual artists is they spend a lot of time alone in their studio. They're creating, they're doing things. And when they do get up on stage, which for many artists it's rare, when they do get up on stage, it's usually to talk about their work. And that is something, when we got up to talk about our work, it's like your baby, you know, and you're talking about it, and you're telling how your process, and you're telling why, and you're telling the deepest, you know, what the meaning is for you. But it's very rare for artists to get up on a stage and just tell a personal story about something that happened. And that is one reason we love it, because it's hard for everyone to do that. And these artists that are going to be speaking today are very brave to get up here. The theme is unexpected human pollination, or unexpected collaboration with people that you didn't know. Let me just ask you, raise your hand if you've ever been in an experience where you were kind of faced with having to collaborate or connect with someone, and in your mind you're like, I don't think these are my peeps. You know, I'm not sure if this is gonna work. You may have felt trepidation, you may have felt some insecurity, or you just might have been dreading it. But then you engage and you find out that once it's all done, it was really something unexpected and extraordinary. Raise your hand if you've had even a small experience like that in your life. Okay, it's a lot of us, right? So these artists are gonna tell those stories, and then afterwards, instead of a Q&A, we're gonna have all of you participate in an aspect of that, okay? So, I think we're ready to introduce our story share. Storytellers, are you ready? Yes, we're ready. Okay.
All right, our first storyteller you may recognize, Kirsten Rao, is a former Westport teacher turned entrepreneur. Kirsten creates vibrant colored pencil drawings of bouquets from the Westport Farmers Market. As you can see in this example, she has a keen eye for detail, and her cheerful spirit translates into her work, as you would imagine. Today, Kirsten brings us a story about finding unexpected pollination very close to home. Please welcome Kirsten.
Am I here or in the middle? The middle. That's great, because then I can use my whole body to tell my story. Hi, I'm Kirsten. It's very nice to see you come out today and create this first Hive sense of community. Thank you for being here. Growing up, my little sister, Sarah, was 5 years younger than me. Good Lord, she followed me all the time. Wanted to do whatever I was doing. How many older siblings do we have here? Okay, cool, so do you know what that feels like? The little ones kind of like tagging along and you're responsible for them and stuff like that. How many youngest siblings do we have here? Okay, cool, I'm talking about y'all. Okay. So we were fast friends during all those early childhood years. And then during adolescence, we started to slip apart. I needed to go do things that I thought were more grown-up things. And she was still trying to follow along, and I was running further and further away. And then I went to college and off to the rest of my life. My sister stayed close to home in Richmond, Kentucky. That's where she went to school as well. And then we both were busy, you know, in your 20s and your 30s, you're building your life, you're building your career, you're building your family, and we would call each other, just catch up, kind of on a superficial level. How you doing? We're good. All right, talk to you later. And that would be every few months. So not like this anymore. Really kind of like happy, proud of each other, but just doing our thing. She is raising 2 boys, and I've got my daughter. I get a phone call early in January 2016. My sister says, "The doctor called me last night. I've been feeling tired after the holidays, and the doctor said, pack your bags. You're getting checked into the hospital tomorrow, and we're gonna throw the most serious chemo we can at you. You have acute myeloid leukemia, stage 3. This is not a drill." So she calls me, and I'm astonished. Now, I'm a school teacher too, which means I can't just drop things and go. So I wait until there's this quick little vacation. About the 3rd week of January, I fly down to Kentucky. Meanwhile, I've been researching, you know, the Google MD that you do, and it only adds to your anxiety. Fly down, hanging out in the hospital with her, and I can tell she's shaky, strong but shaky. And I talk to her husband, hang out with her boys, and I make the commitment in my mind, every spare moment I'm gonna be down here. And I talk to my husband, he's like, absolutely, every spare moment go down. So that whole year of 2016, she wound up to be in the hospital for 127 days, during which her 2 little boys were not allowed to visit at all. Anyone who has raised small children can't conceive. That was probably the hardest detail for her. So I began I would record my sister reading a bedtime story and bring and show it to the boys at night, like, here's your mom reading you a story. But everyone was in overwhelm mode. The day after her birthday is July 6th, July 7th, my sister received a bone marrow transplant that saved her life. I was not the donor. The saddest day of my life was finding out that I wasn't a match for my own sister, because all I wanted to do was like, please take my bone marrow. But her life was saved, and then began the process, the slow healing process. And she developed graft versus host, which means her body was rejecting the cells. She's still on the planet, spoiler. She's still on the planet and she's amazing. But she has to cope with infusions and impacts on her skin and her digestive system and her eyes and her fascia and her proprioception, you know, her ability to perceive where she is. And she's got neuropathy in her feet. So she's got kind of a lot going on. But one of the things that she has chosen to do with this bonus part of her life is to give back, because she remembers what it feels like to be on that bone marrow transplant ward waiting for the procedure, wondering if you're gonna make it. She said she noticed quite a lot of people had no visitors at all. And if you know my sister, she's super social. So what she did was she created something she calls the Zinnia Project, which is why I brought this little prop. And I drew a bouquet of zinnia flowers for her. And what she does is she remembers the products she needed when she was in the hospital. They give you a stiff little nasty toothbrush, and when you've got chemo, your gums are so sensitive, so she puts these really soft toothbrushes in. And very soft, comfortable, like scarves for your head after you lose your hair, and unscented chapstick because anything can make you queasy. And then she puts in little quotes and little drawings and little coloring pages. And I can't, you can't see it, but I'm covered with goosebumps right now because the unexpected human pollination that I experienced was rediscovering my little sister and being there for her every step of the way, and now helping her to spread sunshine and joy in the darkest hours of strangers' lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirsten. Our next storyteller is Suzanne Benton. Suzanne Benton has traveled across many art forms as a painter, a welder, a mask maker, and performer and printmaker. Feminist activism has fueled her decades of artistic work and taken her to 31 countries, East and West, connecting and making friends, welding, performing, running workshops, and sharing. She's a force in so many ways, I can attest to that. Today, Suzanne will be sharing a story of how she was embraced and given the opportunity to do something she had been longing to do in the most unexpected of places.
I'd been to Germany when I was 19. As you know, when we're lucky, we get to go to Europe and spend a little time in those marvelous countries and see the art. And I went to Munich with my friend Grace, and we went to Dachau. It so seared me. I grew up in an apartment building in Queens that had survivors. I stood in the elevator with them and could feel their grief. So in 1980, I gave a performance, not having to do with Germany, my mass tales, at Gene Erdman's Open Eye Theater in Manhattan. And friends came with a couple of Germans who were staying with them. And afterwards, they came, helped me get my mass in the car. And the guy said to me, "Germans would love your work." Well, I would go to the North Pole to find somebody who loved my work. But in 1980, I didn't have the means, to just get on the plane. I had to have some kind of a sponsor. So in 1982, I was sent to Holland to a conference to perform and do workshops. And I took the train to Germany. I had written before. I asked two of my friends, Strapi, who was the guy, and Eva, if I could stay with them. And Strapi answered first. He said, "Come and stay as long as you like." So I arrived by train, and here was this guy. I mean, I didn't really get a good look at him in the dark in Manhattan. He had long hair, and he was wearing overalls, and I have to say, it charmed me. I thought I was going to stay with a couple, but he was getting a divorce, so it was just him and me. Okay, so Eva was connected with the Bread and Puppet Theater, Peter Schumann, And Peter was in town, and she had an evening where she introduced me to these magnificent people. And they embraced me, not only embraced me, they gave me contacts. Oh, you have to go to America House. Oh, here's a gallery. The woman will show your work. So the woman, Geilsdorfer, had a gallery, and I was going to have an exhibit the following year, 6 months from then. I knew I had to make the work in Germany, because I'd done that. I'd already been around the world where I worked in all these countries, and that's just so stimulating. I'm the kind of person that looks for these kinds of experiences. They fill my life. They give me a lot of joy. I'm not afraid of it. I'm hungry for it, really. So the Geilsdorfer came to the house. She came to America, and we have the show. But by the time I got to Germany, the gallery had closed. But I was going to do it anyway. And so, of course, Strapi and I were kind of an item at that point. And he was very excited that I was coming, so he found the scrapyard. He found this welding supplier. And just down the street, there was a fabricator at a 30-foot building who gave me a space to work that was bigger than my own studio. And it was free. So I worked away. But the day I came to Germany, in the airport, somebody was holding up the Daily News, and it said, the 50th anniversary of Hitler's rise to power. So if I wanted to change my mind and not work on the Holocaust, I couldn't, because it was a media blitz. Every day in the news, there was something about the Second World War and the Holocaust. Also, Klaus Balke had been a Nazi in France who was torturing. No, Klaus Balke had been a freedom fighter in France, and I can't remember who's who here, but in any case, the torture was described on television and on the radio. So I would go into the studio with this in my mind and the people, and I ended up making 25 masks on the theme. It was challenging, of course, because it was so dark. But I had all this opportunity just constantly coming. So I ended up being there for 3 years, back and forth, he back and forth to me, and making all this work and showing in all this work. But one of the most fascinating times was I met this photographer, Michael Stamm, who introduced me to this TV person, the German television, WDR. Now, I had written a book called The Art of Welded Sculpture, and it describes going to the scrapyard, making the work, blah, blah. And he said, okay, we're going to the scrapyard tomorrow. We went to the scrapyard. They videoed me. It was, I mean, I wouldn't have gotten a medal if it wasn't for them. Talk about collaboration. And then we brought it to the studio, and he said, okay, work. So I started 3 masks. They videoed me. It was really exciting. And then he said, okay, finish it. Finish them, because you're going to be on television on Monday. So I finished them. They would not have existed if it wasn't for that circumstance. And then there I was in Stuttgart. I have to say that I went to Tunisia in between. The US government sent me to Tunisia. And then I come back to Stuttgart. And Strapi was my translator. And there I was in a black dress with these, really, they were beautiful masks. And I didn't say anything, but I, moved with the mask. And the music that they chose was Das Boot. So there I had that dark, dark time, but all of that support to do it. At the same time, I was looking to shift my work. I wanted to go back to the 2-dimension. And I was doing these collages on the same theme. But I came home in the interim, and I took a course with Ann Kresge on printmaking with collage techniques. And when I got back to Germany, a friend of Stroppi's had a press that I was able to print and then blah, blah, go on and on. So instead of working with the heavy sheets of steel, I was working with these light, feathery pieces of paper that I was collaging into my prints. And I found, after this dark, dark, dark time, a level of beauty came into this work that I actually had no idea I had within me. And that just kept going. And my connection with Germany, I have to tell you, this was before Shoah, this was before Schindler's List. So I feel I opened the door for them, not in the sense that maybe they knew what I was doing, but like the 100th monkey, you know? Like when you do something, it's out there, somehow it's out there. And made a lot of friends there. My family was very iffy at first, but won over. And it's about cross-pollination. It's about accepting people. There was a young man that I met who had gone to Israel and worked in an old people's home instead of going to the service, to the army. And I said to him, well, what it was like for you? He said, well, I went and I said to them, you know, I'm German, I don't know if this is a problem. And they said, we judge people as who they are as people. And so that's what we have to do. And my time's up.
Thank you, Suzanne. Our next storyteller, born and raised in the Bronx, Daniel Lanzalotta. I've known Daniel for a number of years. He was a big collaborator at Beechwood when we were running events. And what I know about Daniel is that he is a master at almost everything. He finds a way to dig deep into details. Currently, he's an environmental artist, someone who harvests post-consumer plastic waste and turns it into something insignificant, into something significant. He spends no money on art supplies. He makes his work nearly anywhere he is and is often crafting his pieces in public. And Daniel's going to bring us a story today of a seemingly insignificant encounter that ends up with a significant impact in his life. Daniel?
Back in Westport. Hello. I'm back in Westport. I've been in Westport for a little bit. I lived here for 19 years, and I'll start with coming back to Westport 4 years ago. I was living in Bedford-Stuyvesant, and it was the day before Thanksgiving. And I went shopping in Brooklyn for all the food that I needed to cook. I'm a chef as well. And I don't know why I made that decision. That was a really not smart idea. And I had a lot of food in a shopping cart thing. And I realized that I couldn't get on the train because there was no elevator where I was at. So I finally got down, I had to carry everything down the stairs, and I got to Metro North. And since it was the day before Thanksgiving, there was one seat next to mine. And it was the seat where there's 4 across and 3 across, and I had my food here. And a few minutes later, Gandhi got on the train. No, I mean this Gandhi. And I was like blown away. This Gandhi was coming towards me, a very frail, brown, glasses, completely skin bald. And he's looking at me, and he's pushing my food away, and he's like, "Can I sit there? I'm from the Bronx." And I was like, yeah, sure, okay. So he pushes my food, and that was kind of rude and kind of internally raging. And so then he sits down, and I'm not paying attention to him, and that's very disrespectful to somebody who looks like Gandhi, by the way. And so he's sitting there, and the train starts to leave, and I get a poke. Oh, a poke, bam. And he says, "Would you like a rice cake?" Sure, yeah, I want a rice cake. And I thought, a rice cake is a modern day olive leaf. And he was saying he was sorry to me. So I accepted the rice cake, and I had on like 3 other brooches from ocean debris plastics. That's what all that is. And we started this conversation. He's like, "What is all that?" And I started explaining to him what I do as an environmental artist. And he looks at me, he says, "I'm a documentary filmmaker. Would you be interested in being in a documentary?" And I was like, "Sure, right, okay." And I didn't really buy that because I'm from the Bronx. And I said, "Yeah, okay." And the conversation literally went like off the charts. This guy's brain was like nothing I've ever come across. I've never heard anyone speak like this before. This guy was on another level of intelligence I have not had the likes of again. And the conversation just got better and better, and so we exchanged information. And I said, "Well, if you're not doing anything for Thanksgiving, come to Bridgeport." And he said, "Sure, okay." And he was going off to Yale to look for a space for an event. It turns out he was the lead technologist for Burning Man's online event during COVID. He's a worldwide producer of events all over the world. He's a yogi. He's just unbelievably intelligent. And he does a lot of alternative medicine in South America, if you know what I'm talking about. And the conversation really was like quite intense. And so I went about my business, he went about his business. We got in touch the next day for Thanksgiving. He couldn't make it. And I let it go. Done. Next thing I know, months went by, and I heard from him. And he said, "Would you like to come and show your work in Italy?" He was from Calabria. He was Sicilian. And I said, "I'm Sicilian." And so I said, "Sure." And I didn't believe it. And so, because I'm from the Bronx. And so I said, "Sure, okay." Next thing I know, he says, "I'm going to be in New York. I'd like to talk to you." So I go. I think 1 hour. 6 hours in a cafe with Simeone. And it just got crazier and crazier. And we parted ways, never heard from him. Months went by. And then he got in touch with me. I had a ticket. I'm on a plane. I'm landing in Calabria. And I still don't believe him. Why? From the Bronx. I'm in the airport late at night. There's a guy standing there with a piece of paper this big, as you know, how people stand at airports. And I'm like, I knew it. I knew he wasn't showing up. So I literally go over, and I had to go look at the little card, and it was my name on it. I said, "I'm Lanzalotta." And we'll go to a pensione. Like, the pensione blew my mind. The whole thing blew my mind. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, everything was paid for. The speaking engagement, translate a show. And I got a chance to experience how an artist is treated on a level I've never had before. And the respect and love and the way people embraced me there, it just blew my mind. And I said, I gotta have more of this. Gotta have more of this. It made me very proud to be Italian American. And so I went back to the States, didn't hear from him anymore, and then I did, and then he wanted to collaborate on a gigantic project in Australia. So I designed this crazy whole shebang, and then COVID happened. So what I walked away with was that the mask, to put aside the mask, in the times that we live in, don't resist, be conductive. Have a conversation with somebody who doesn't look like you, sound like you, believe in you, not yourself, your sexual orientation, religion, whatever it is. Don't resist. That empowers the oppressor. When you are conductive, that's the magic that happens. That's what I walked away with. Simeone and I are still very good friends. He's in South America now doing ayahuasca ceremonies. I was supposed to go down last year with him to be a chef at a ceremony that didn't quite work out. We keep in constant communication. He's come to New York several times to see shows of mine. And through that one relationship, my life has been incredibly enriched. So that's what I leave you with. Don't resist, be conductive. The oppressor doesn't want you to speak with somebody who doesn't look or sound like you. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Okay, the next artist to share a story is Jen Greeley, who's an experimental printmaker and painter. Jen lives in Westport and maintains a studio in Norwalk, and she began her exploration into art with a single class through Westport Continuing Education. 10 years later, she has a collector base spanning 2 continents. Jen's story is about what happens when a fangirl and her art hero finally meet.
So my relationship with artist Benny Burstein began with me as her stalker. I'd never been a stalker before, and I've never been one since, so let's just, pretend I'm normal. It was December of 2015, and I was what I call a baby artist. I had taken a couple years of classes. I was really working hard on just understanding what is this whole art world about. And as part of that, I was going to openings, galleries, listening to artist talks. So I happened to be going to this one show that there was artist talks were there. And in the back of the room, I see this big painting. It's weird. It's got this beautiful pool on it, like in this gorgeous, luscious blue color that's kind of glowing. And then dissecting the whole painting is this shocking red line. And then over the top, coming down over the front, is this like putrescent, flesh-colored, thick, hard drips, glops of paint, really. I loved it. I had no clue what was going on. Like, who in the world would even come up with something like this? And that was Benny Burstein. So she gives her artist talk. I go up and I introduce her and I say, "Hi, I'm Jen Greeley." Like, how did you do that? And yet part of me meant, how did you do the encaustic painting? But the other part of me meant, subconsciously, like, what is this? Like, why did you even create something like that? It's really kind of upsetting in a way. And she says, gives me her card, and she says, "Call me. I have a studio in Norwalk, and I teach." And I took her card, and I thought, okay, I got to figure out how to do this first before I go ask her to teach me, because she's like a master, and I don't want to look dumb. So I didn't call her. So instead, months go by, I take a different workshop, and then I hear there's this conference. I sign up for this conference. After I get the registration back, I see the list of attendees. Lo and behold, Benny Burstein was going to be there. Now, I've spent many months following Benny Burstein's work, looking at it online, looking at her Facebook, waiting to see, is she going to show anywhere else? This is very exciting. My friends all know this is going on. They're like, "Jen, you just got to she gave you her card, give her a call." So I'm like, okay, it's going to be my chance. At this conference, it's going to be my chance. And there's an opportunity there. You bring your work and you can share it and show it with other people. So I go, and the first night, it's a cocktail hour, and I look across the garden, and there she is. And I thought, oh my gosh. So like a good stalker, I don't go up and say hello. I pull out my phone, and from sideways, I take pictures of her, and I send them to my friends, and I say, "You guys, she's here, she's here." And they're like, "Oh God, you're so ridiculous. Go say hello." So 2 days go by, I still haven't said hello. I go out of my hotel room, and in the hallway, there she's standing, Benny Burstein, finishing up a conversation with other people. And she finishes, and I'm like, I'm doing it. So I walk up and I say, hi, Benny Burstein. Yeah, like I don't know. My name's Jen Greeley. I'm new at this. Would you be willing to come and look at my work in my room and tell me what you think? And she goes like this. I have a couple minutes. Where's your room? I'm like, well, actually, it's right here. Come on in. So she comes in and she picks up my paintings and she turns them over and she's looking at them. She stands back and she says, wow, technically they're very good. And I'm like, oh my God. She says, people will buy them. And I'm like, really? Because I've never sold anything in my life, but okay. And she goes, yes, it's like something you'd find at Home Goods. It's like a knife in my heart. And she said, where do you live? I said, I live in Westport, Connecticut. She's like, oh, I live in Norwalk. And so she invited me to come over and take some classes. And I swallowed my pride. First, this is after I thought about, look, how far do I have to move with my family to never see this person again? But I swallowed my pride and I gave her a call. And I started taking some classes. And that morphed into really working with her in her studio as like a studio assistant. And the gift of that to anyone who's an artist or wants to know about art, to be able to watch somebody in their studio like a fly on the wall as an invited guest is unlike anything, I think, else. I watched her as she struggled and grappled, even as a master, with the creative process. I saw those mistakes turn brilliance. I learned how to handle work. I will never forget the scathing lecture I got when I put the bubble wrap on backwards on some encaustic paintings. And I will never do it again. Benny was honest, brutally so, but she gave so much more in that honesty than I think I had ever seen in my life. That studio assistantship evolved into going out into what I called the larger art world. She took me into the city, she took me to openings, to galleries, to museums. I struggled to keep up as I followed along behind her, and she walked by paintings going, crap, nah, oh, and then she would stop and stare. And I'd stand next to her and go, what's she thinking? And over time, I came up with my own thoughts on things, and I saw a little bit of what an art appreciator sees. That when you're moved by something, by the energy of a piece or by that universal emotion that it conveys, it's like a conversation with the artist, and they've left it behind for you to think about. So time goes by, and in these car rides, I learned so much more from her. We talk about motherhood, about aging, about marriage, about divorce, about financial constraints. And the insight as I'm going through my initial part of my 40s at this point is like, it's like that, I don't know, big sister, mother, parent, these things I've never had in my life of somebody to help me through and figure it out. So we're going along, we've got this great routine. And then she gets diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And we're like, oh, it hasn't actually been that long that we've known each other and we have this relationship that is so close. And so I quickly, everything changes. And I go from student to mentee to friend to caregiver. And even in that period of time, when we were only occasionally in her studio, she continued to teach me so many things. Accepting help with grace, of being vulnerable, of loving others with abandon. So 852 days, that's how long Benny was in my life. And it's like, in hindsight, a blip. right? There was 41 years without her, and there's been 6 years since without her. But I still rely on those lessons that she left me. I think of that little blip in time as like a light in a lighthouse that comes around when you need it, you know? When I'm lost. And I can hear her words so carefully, saying, show up, do the work, and you'll figure it out. And I did. I don't really paint an encaustic, but what she gave me was that permission to find my voice, to have the confidence, to realize in this art world, I belong. I don't have to run away and hide and take secret pictures anymore. I could walk up to somebody and look them in the eye and say, hi, I'm Jen Greeley. I'm a big admirer of your work. So that's my unexpected human pollination.
Thank you, Jen. We have two more storytellers. The next one, Mari Georgi, who we've known for a long time, an award-winning mixed media artist who hails from Stanford, has her studio at Firing Circuits in Norwalk. Now, Mari does all sorts of things on all sorts of things. She paints on silk, she does canvas, she does paper, she does sculpture, all sorts of things, prints. But one significant body of work of Mari's are her artist books, filled with narrative, incredibly detailed artwork. Her books are some of our favorite works of art. They're handheld interactive jewels that open up into worlds of meaning. Mari's story is about the life influences that a tragic set of circumstances in her family's life launched, that in turn influenced her greatly, led to her latest series of artist books.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mari. The year is 1945, and the Germans had lost the war and left Hungary. And the Russians, under Stalin, came in and took over Hungary. Immediately, there was a state of fear. A dictatorship came in, and everyone was petrified. There were mass arrests by the AVO, who were the Hungarian secret police. Basically, they said, if those accused of treason will be taken, tortured, and put into prison, or they'll just simply disappear. So this is the environment that the Hungarians grew up in, or stayed in. Everyone was suspicious of everyone else, because basically, if you were taken in and you said, I know somebody who really did this, then they would leave you alone. They asked for 2 names, and it would go on and on like that. So it was a terrible time, and it continued for a very long time after that. Flip to 1948, and there's a university student, happy-go-lucky, my father, Frank Georgi. And he got drunk with a French kid one night. They had a blast. Next day, my father's walking to school, and a big black car with blacked out windows stops and summons him to get in the car. He gets in the car and is brought to AVO headquarters, where he is indeed tortured, put in prison, and they announced to him that he is a French spy for General de Gaulle. My father was 19 years old and didn't speak a word of French. So he's put in prison and for 7.5 years. In 1956, he escapes through Austria, along with 200,000 other fleeing Hungarians who were trying to get away from this communist totalitarian regime, this fascism that had taken over Hungary and the rest of Eastern Europe. So he goes first to Austria and ends up in America, in New Haven, Connecticut. And there he meets a fellow refugee who is my mother, who also has incredible stories. They get married, and they start their lives, and they have 2 children in the early 1960s, one of which is myself. And I remember all my life, first of all, we were brought up very Hungarian. We didn't speak English till we were about 6 or 7. And what happened was, my house was a microcosm of Hungary. And my parents never held back on the stories and the things that had happened to them and happened to the country. And they didn't get it quite into the horror for a 6-year-old, but they talked about the negative things, the positive things, of which there were not too many in this kind of atmosphere. But, oh, okay. Anyway, the point that I'm trying to make is that this experience, their experiences, other Hungarians' experiences that I heard, that I lived through growing up, they basically taught me that you cannot live in a country of fear. And that I realized later, and now especially, how incredibly brave they were. And so their past, their fate, the Eastern European history, everything has basically cross-pollinated or pollinated me and made me the artist I am. And this is where my artist books come from. Thank you very much. And by the way, think of what I just told you in November.
Thank you, Mari. Okay, so our 6th and final storyteller is Alicia Cobb. Alicia is a self-taught but award-winning visual artist, body painter, teaching artist, and muralist from Bridgeport. She draws her inspiration from humanity and human vulnerabilities. She empowers her students to find their artistic voice and inspires them to embrace their authenticity and celebrate their stories and foster connections. She gives back to her community, and she was awarded Artist of the Year in 2022 from the Cultural Alliance of Fairfield County. Alicia has a strong commitment to pushing artistic boundaries and a lot of other boundaries too. Alicia and I share a birthday, and we see a lot of each other in each other. She pushes artistic boundaries, and she always encourages meaningful dialogue. Her story is about how unwavering commitment to an idea will find its partner if you don't give up.
Hi. A year ago, I could have never imagined that the various art forms that I've practiced for myself for years would come together and create a really meaningful experience for the youth that I work with and the community that I am in. I kind of have taken the unconventional approach with my art career, with body art being one of the things that people know me best for, and I literally paint on human bodies. I also paint on sidewalks and walls. I do paint on canvas as well, but I find a lot of love in the idea of bodies because there's a connection, and murals because it's public art that gives people access that might not ordinarily have access to art. And so during COVID, I ended up teaching virtually because so many things got closed down. And there was this amazing organization that I started to work for called LifeBridge Community Services in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And they specialize in behavioral health. They literally are all about community behavioral health. And I was teaching in a program called the Urban Scholars Program with students from all over Bridgeport. And I was meeting these kids and seeing so much of myself in these students. Some of them attended this program once we were back in person for a meal. Like, they're underserved. These are communities that underserved, and that resonates with me because I come from an underserved community, and I was one of those children who attended programs for a meal. So this, for me, was firsthand dealing with myself as a child. And I had this idea coming out of COVID because I saw the effect that isolation was having, not just on children, but on everyone, and art being a connector during that time. During COVID, everybody was turning to art for comfort, for solace, taking on new opportunities to learn about themselves and connect. And so I thought, what could I do when we do come back together to bring community? And so my idea was a collaborative mural that youth would create in their community, and the community could also get involved in it. And I had pitched this idea during COVID, and it kind of didn't get accepted because COVID continued to be a crisis. And the last thought on anybody's mind was, oh, let's paint a giant mural with a bunch of people coming together when we have this crazy virus going around. And then something happened a couple years ago. LifeBridge got a new CEO, and she's this amazing person who actually individually talked to each employee, took me to lunch one day and asked me to be honest about what I felt about the company and how it felt to be working there. And I was very candid, and I told her, I feel like the kids are not getting what they were promised, and I have this idea for this mural, and I've pitched it a couple times, and nobody is listening to me. And after just a couple of sentences, she looked at me and said, let's do it. She had very little context of what this would entail. She didn't know what it would cost. She didn't know what it would even look like. She just believed what I said when I said it. And so then became the Urban Scholars Mural Club. We already had the Urban Scholars program, but we started the Mural Club. And so there were selected students who came in who were really passionate about art, and we had to decide, one, what we were gonna paint. So this collaborative effort began because we had to, one, come up with an idea for what we were gonna do, and we realized community was super important. And so I worked with another artist who taught the kids the second principle of nonviolence, the Kingian principle, is beloved community. And so we started to ask these kids, what does beloved community mean to you? And so we put them into small teams, and they had to create ideas and visions around what beloved community meant to them. And then they had to work in teams. So that was the first part of the collaboration, right? And once we had them in teams, the second part of the collaboration was they had to come up with ideas that could be cohesive. So they worked together, 3, 4, 5 kids on one team for one letter, but they all had very different ideas and opinions, and they had to figure out how to make them work together. So that was the second tier. And then the third one was actually getting this mural painted involving not just these students, but the community as well. The joy that came from this project, the connection that I saw happen between the students, the community. We actually had a day where there was ice cream and face painting, and the kids are out there with the rollers and the brushes, and the community in that neighborhood came around, and everybody became a part of this mural that literally reads, "Beloved Community." And it was just such a magical experience. These kids got to see their ideas come to real life, not just by them, but also by the community that they were a part of, and that connection then happened. Once this happened, I was hooked, and it kind of has caught fire. And since that mural, last summer, I've done at least 6 more collaborative community murals, one of which we just finished at Bridgeport Hospital. A new group of kids through LifeBridge Community Services just finished a collaborative mural right past the Sky Bridge at Bridgeport Hospital. So if you ever go there and you're walking through the Sky Bridge and you see this beautiful, colorful landscape, these kids designed and painted this mural. And so it was unexpected human pollination that created something more magical than I could have ever imagined. And now I'm watching these kids and the community benefit from this idea that became everybody's, not just mine. And it's just been a really beautiful experience, and I want to continue doing it. Thank you.
I'm going to ask Alicia to stay up, and all the artists, please come up and have a seat on the stage. We're going to start our community conversation part.
I'm doing handheld. Sorry. Okay. Thank you. First of all, let's have another round of applause for these artists. Every story was touching, beautiful, funny, and interesting. So this is not the typical Q&A. What we're going to do now is we, all of us in the room, and the artists, so we're going to have a conversation about your own stories of unexpected human pollination. But we're going to do it in a way that we call empathy mapping. Clearly, there won't be time for everyone in this room to tell a story, but I want you to fix in your mind your story. Remember earlier I said how many people have had this happen? So if you've had this happen, or if after listening to this story you realize, oh, I have had something like this happen to me, I want you to fix that story in your mind. And I'm going to call out some questions. And what you're going to do is you're going to call out nice and loud. And if you have a hard time being nice and loud, we do have a mic that we can bring to you. The first thing is, of course, you're not going to tell your actual stories because there isn't time. And also, when you offer some things, after having told your story, people interpret that within the story. So we like to keep this just your reflections. And not all of our answers are going to be aligned, and that's okay. That's why we do this. We're looking for single words or short phrases in response to what I'm going to ask. And it's just you call out your experience. No need to comment on anyone else's experience or, heaven forbid, correct someone else's experience. And we're just going to do this in 6 questions, okay? So the first question is, first of all, remember what your experience is. It's a real experience that you've had. And my first question is, what was something that you liked about that experience? Anyone? And you guys can throw it out, word or phrase.
Connection.
Connection. Vulnerability. What else? Confidence. Escaping my comfort zone. Good. Appreciation. Good. What else?
Excitement.
Excitement. Knowledge. By the way, oh, you see that? That's Frederick somewhere. The man behind the screen is typing. Unbelieving. Good. In behind her. Empowerment. Good. What else did you like about it? Friendship. Good. What else? Acceptance. Support. Honesty. Great. Does anyone else have a couple more? Let's try and get a couple more. What did you like? Comfort. Success. New insights. Imagine or magic? Magic. Good. Encouragement. Okay, yes. Sharing. Good. Any others? Diversity. Okay, so my second question is, what about the experience was intimidating or gave you pause or that you didn't like? Same thing, call it out.
Tragedy.
Tragedy. Fear. Indifference. Uncertainty. Language. Surprise. So that's interesting. Wasn't surprise one of the things we liked? That could go both ways. There was someone raised a hand over here, no? Unconventional. What else did you not like or made you uncomfortable?
Lack of support.
Humility. Overwhelming.
Somebody said vulnerability.
Vulnerability.
And I said lack of support.
Lack of support. I help her. Suffering. Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to ask you about how you feel. The first thing I want to ask you, how did you feel at the beginning? You know, at the beginning where you don't know how the thing is going to play out? How did you feel at the beginning? Unconnected. I'm sorry, say it again, Bob. Jeff, I mean, fearful. Inspired. Hollow. Lost. Creative. Excited. Grateful. Okay, how did you feel at the beginning? You know, like when that man came up to you and moved your food, how did you feel?
I was annoyed.
Annoyed. So how did you feel at the beginning when you weren't sure, like, what is this? What else?
Anticipation.
Anticipation. Hopeful. Futile. Trepidation. Terror? Terror. Unseen. Okay, good. So now let's go to the next. How did you feel at the end? Distant. Okay, at the end when this all came out to be something, yes, accepted. Proud. You were going to say proud, so proud and proud, a double proud. What else? Connected.
Grateful.
Grateful.
Triumphant.
Triumphant. What else?
Inspired.
Giving. Inspired. Understood. Changed. Heard. More. Warmth. Warmth. Surprised. Yes. Love. Good. It's so interesting, isn't it, when you think that these stories pass through our lives, maybe even more than we realize it. Maybe we'll all realize it a little more after this conversation, but something that you could feel so many negative things going into it and so many positive things coming out the other way. When you think about that, based on this experience, what do you think we could do as a community to help more people move toward and into these experiences rather than reject them? Okay, good. What else? Listen. We could listen more. Who was it that said something here? I'm sorry, I missed it.
I can't remember what it
That's okay, it'll come back around.
I liked in Daniel's story, talking to somebody that you think you have nothing in common with.
Right, so to make the move, to talk to someone that you think you have nothing in common with. Someone had their hand raised over here, yes. Empower people. What else? Acceptance. Being open-minded, yeah. Sometimes we have to remind ourselves. We think we're going around being open-minded, and sometimes we aren't. Show up. Big one. How about anyone back there? You can yell, I'll hear you, and then I'll make it loud. What else could we do as a community? Take action. Good. Being with people in person, yes. Step out of your comfort zone. All right. Step out of your comfort zone? Yeah, so we can say it again. It'll be twice.
I think vulnerability.
Vulnerability, yes, it's hard to be vulnerable, but when we are, yes. Say that again. Finally, I felt now I could die happy. That's something.
She said create opportunities.
Create opportunities. So create more opportunities. Good. What else? What else could we do?
Surrender.
Let go of preconceived ideas. Good. What else?
Surrender.
Surrender, yes. You had to surrender to the guy sitting at the seat next to you. And you took I think taking the rice cake is also something, a metaphor. It's a good metaphor. Yes. Get involved. Attend P&Z meetings. Good. Yes. Yeah, don't assume. Right? I mean, we all grew up with that. We know what happens when you assume. I won't say it because they're recording. But yeah, don't assume. Invite people to eat food together. You know, sharing food is a very powerful act. It's very powerful in creating connection. Kind of hard to not feel connected with people when you're having a meal together, or even a rice cake or snack. Be persistent. Yes. Be persistent. Like if you try it. Is anyone kind of coming away with this thinking, you know, I'm going to do this one thing a little differently? Anyone? Yes. The P&Z better start putting some chairs out because that seems to be, okay. What else? What else might you do differently? Listening to this and thinking about how things can transform. Yes. Take a chance. Yeah.
Reach out.
Reach out. So reach out to someone you think might be negative with their response. That's interesting. So that's a be brave even, right? Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Don't preach to the converted. Okay.
Instead of debating, say, tell me more.
Interesting. Instead of saying, tell me more. Yeah, tell me more is a very powerful phrase.
Why?
Or tell me why. What else? What did you like about the story share today? What aspect of it did you like?
I loved hearing different stories, different perspectives.
Right.
Everybody comes from a different background, so I loved hearing the stories about how this thing that probably would have never happened to create something
Right. So the
bigger
different
than ourselves.
the different stories, different perspectives. Good. Yes. Everyone grew with their story. Yes, that was interesting, right? What else?
Very human.
You like the story? Yes, the art the art element makes everything somehow able to come to life in a way, right? David.
The thing that struck me, I think, was the element of surprise in many stories.
Yes.
Being open to the experience within the surprise.
Right. The element of surprise and being open to what that surprise is bringing. Yeah.
The craft, not just in communicating the story, but also in the visual narrative of the artwork.
Yeah, the visual narrative to the artwork is nice. Karen. Great, thank you. The joy of the unexpected. Yes. The courage to share, yes. You guys did a great job. Okay, so I just wanted
to say feel connected. I mean, I didn't really know anybody here. And now I know something so deep about everybody. And it's a wonderful feeling.
You know, sharing stories does connect people. And, you know, there's a long tradition in many cultures, whether it's sitting around the table over coffee or sitting around a campfire, telling stories connects people. And that's part of why we're doing these story shares. Yes?
Everyone took risks.
Yes, everybody up here took risks. That's true. That's true. Does anyone else want to share any other thoughts about today, about the story shares, about the subject of unexpected human pollination? Is there anyone who thinks that they might change their approach a little bit when they've faced with someone they think might be annoying, or when they feel like they think they know what's going to happen, but maybe be open to something else? Anyone feel they might make a difference?
I want to say it's not really hard to get people engaged, that people are looking for it.
So what Suzanne said is that it's not really hard to get people engaged. People are looking for it. And I think what we've learned here today is it might be even closer than you think, right? It might be there waiting for you in the next person. I want you to be able to ask a couple of questions, if you want, to the artists before we go. But I also want to acknowledge the artists who are in the audience who were not telling a story today, but whose beautiful work you saw before we started and that have been running for the last several days in the library, and they're going to be running even after this. So if you could just stand up if you have work that's being shown up on the screen. And give everybody a round of applause, because the work is really beautiful. And doesn't it look amazing on this screen? As long as you have the right number of megs. But it's really beautiful. It looks great. Does anyone have a specific question for any of the artists that they would like to ask? When are we going to do this again? Well, I hope, hopefully very soon. We're in the middle of, we've just launched, and we're in the middle of talking to a lot of community organization partners, and so we hope that we're going to be doing a lot more of these story shares and the pollinator gatherings and the cross-pollination ideations and swarms. We're slowly figuring out how we're going to do that. So. What are you going to do with all these answers? So what we will have other conversations, and this is an empathy mapping exercise that I've done for many, many years with my clients, with other community organizations. And we're going to use it, we're going to build on this kind of database of responses and experiences, and we will be putting it on the website. And by the way, our website is The Hive by Beechwood, B-E-E-C-H Wood. And if you want to get our mailings, you can go there, you could sign up, and we'll send you the mailings from the Hive. And also, we'll have things there, like some of the results of some of these conversations, so that you can refer to it as well. Okay? So, guys, thank you so much. Thank you all so much. And have a wonderful rest of your Sunday.